Student Activities Officer. The Student Activities Officer supports and develops engagement and inclusivity in extracurricular activities at the University of York, including societies, media, raising and giving, volunteering, and other events. The Student Activities Officer represents more than 200 student groups to the university, lobbying for their interests and making sure that they receive the recognition that they deserve.
Hi, I'm Iwan Stone. I am the co-editor of Vision, and I am here with Hugh Campkin, who is running to be your next Student Activities Officer. So, Hugh, you ran last year for the same role, coming in third place to Brian Terry with 666 votes to his 1,144. Looking at your campaign here this year, the main thing that seems to have changed is your haircut. So why should we elect you now?
Well, a lot of the stuff that I did last year was, I mean, it's still very relevant to kind of the things that this year. But last year, I think I've got a lot of experience with like organizing events. I've been involved in many student groups over, I mean, I'm now in my 5th year, so I've been part of loads of different societies, both in and out of uni, and as well as like working with people like Black Box and on, as well as being president of USNO and this year Trip Secretary, albeit there's not been a trip, but there's I've had an extensive sort of experience, and I think last year, I mean, well, Brian won. Brian, I mean, he ran the year before. He narrowly lost to Ollie Martin the year before, and so I knew it was going to be a sort of a tough competition, and I took it on the chin. And yeah, and I think that this shows that I'm just committed to. Well, I'm running again because I am very committed to making sure that York has a good sort of activities officer, one who's right for the role.
Oh, brilliant. So a lot of the experience that you mentioned there, such as with USNO and within clubs, is, I think, safely called what we could say with outgoing societies. Why are you the candidate for smaller, less vocal or more serious societies as well?
Well, I've been involved in a lot of sort of smaller society. I mean, in first year, I made an effort to go along to as many societies as possible, and I know the importance of basically of what it means to have extracurricular activities and how much it means to your university experience being involved in society, whether that's a bigger society or a smaller one. And I want to represent, whilst a lot of my manifesto points are, and a lot of my experience is in sort of, like you say, more outgoing societies and events. That's I'm still very committed to making sure that the less represented societies have their say.
So talking about your manifesto there, the first 2 points of your manifesto talking about reinvigorating nightlife and a sort of LinkedIn style platform for students to share things, they seem to rely quite heavily on being able to interact in person again. Having been plagued by COVID for nearly a year, this doesn't seem to be any certainty. How will you adapt to these policies if lockdown regulations have to return?
Well, I'd like to take a more optimistic approach of not planning for failure, but I do understand that it is a possibility that these things can happen, and I want to make sure that we're ready to do so. But I think that there has been a good infrastructure throughout York. There's only so much that you can do from home as for a society. I found that myself with USNO this year. There's online societies, but it would be good that now we've had a year of experiencing this, we can know what to expect, and we can prepare for that should it come about.
How do you want to prepare to these should they come about?
So, for example, creating online training for society committees. So I think that there is a lot. I mean, this pandemic has shown us that a lot of stuff that is done in person can be done online. So there's no reason for these things to not be sort of online resources as well as in person. So things like training, suggestions for societies to how to kind of get new members and stuff, and signposting them to student groups, for example, on Facebook and things, where they might find where they can find new members who are keen on joining the society, even if it does just mean that it's an online event.
Okay. So a lot of these policies that you've mentioned seem to be very expensive to put in place, particularly looking at, you talk about doing a club night in the RKC. During the pandemic, that's caused UC to reduce a lot of fundings, particularly to societies. How do you expect to find the money to allow you to do that?
So it's going to be, so this year there's been a lot of, for example, Pat has worked really hard to get the forest set up, and because there's not been things on campus, there's been a lot of sort of obviously the funding is not there, but one of the biggest sort of money makers for USU in terms of kind of events and things is York Parties. York Parties, there was a lot of heat targeted at them last year about their policies and sort of the lack of transparency with them. But the contract does bring a lot of money, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't still hold York Parties to this. We definitely should. But it's going to be sort of a case of redistributing the payment. And I think that some of the policies, I think, including so my policies about nightlife and campus clubs, for example, club night in the RKC, or just live music in the RKC, it would only be on weekends, because that's sort of realistically the only time that can be because of Derwent catering. So if we were to get bands in, it could be ticketed events, sort of, so they kind of fund themselves, and if they are done kind of properly. And from my experience in running events and preparing events, you can make a place look good on a very small budget if you know how.
You've talked about York Parties, which you agree has been a controversial topic over the last year. Moving on to another, you were very vocal last year talking about Turning Point UK. Now that they've been ratified, how do you hope to work with them?
Well, so they were ratified. Well, so they have to be re-ratified. They were ratified last year, but actually nobody stepped up to actually fill the position. Now they've been ratified. If they were to get re-ratified, if I were to re-ratify them, I think it would be keeping a close eye on them, just making sure that they are sort of staying in line, because whilst the members aren't representative necessarily of the entire views of the society, they are representative of the society, and then therefore have a responsibility for the kind of the actions. And I am an advocate for freedom of speech, but I think that we live in university is a very progressive place, and we shouldn't be endorsing societies or organizations that are going to be sort of advocating hate speech.
How does that statement equate with your time as a YourFest admin?
Well, so the YourFest that I was on was originally made as basically as a replacement for Yik Yak, and it was, the idea behind it was that so I had nothing to do with the current YourFest, but
sorry, Hugh, this is I've got to count you down, and I'm passing on to Harry and Chess in the green room. Thank you.